Putting back on. Well, that is unfortunate. Fortunately, we didn't miss really anything, but still. That's unfortunate. Dinner was unusually bland. It had no flavor or aroma. The miso soup that normally tantalized my appetite instead tasted like nothing but boiled water. Dad was eating with us that night. It was a rare occurrence in this household. When he got into his work, he ate and slept on his own schedule. My dad never cared about the time. Since my dad was at the dinner table, it either meant he had just reached a good point to take a break, or he was in a slump.
とにかく作家のモチベーションってものを理解してないんだよ彼は。
タイアップの話だって口約束なんでしょ。そんなに反りが合わないならきっぱりお断りしたら。
助け合いの世界だからお互い様だとは思うんだけど、これじゃ仕事にな。
I wasn't able to pick out much of my mom's and dad's conversation, but I could tell it wasn't a very pleasant topic. That, of course, made the disgusting food even less appealing. Staring listlessly at the exchange between my parents, my mind wandered off to the same thought process I had going all day long. Friends close to me, no, they used to be friends, but I could no longer trust them. Right now I was greatly lacking in allies. People I trusted, people I could depend on when push came to shove. They were something I just didn't have. Having just one ally would have been incredibly reassuring in the currently hopeless situation I was in. I put down my chopsticks and looked over at my parents who were still talking about work. The first course of action that came to my mind was to tell my parents everything. Currently there wasn't a single person from Hinamizawa I could trust 100%. That meant the only people I could trust were my parents. But if I told them everything that happened up until now, would they understand? Rena, for example. That neighborly Rena who was so diligent in looking after me, came to get me every day and sometimes brought over a share of what she made. How could I explain that she wanted to kill me? No matter how I explained, it would probably be difficult for anybody to comprehend. Comprende? My somewhat eccentric dad wouldn't understand, and my high-strung mom would probably drag me off to a psychiatrist in the blink of an eye. Sadly, that was the amount of trust that existed in our relationship. Even if they did come to understand, what could they possibly do? Unless they could uncover the truth, they wouldn't be able to protect me. No, by informing them of these unnecessary things, I'd be putting my parents in danger as well. Considering that the victims in the past incidents were often married couples, I couldn't even joke about it. For the entire Mabera family to have an accident or just to just vanish into thin air, it was easily possible in Hinamizawa. What was important here was knowing something unnecessary puts you in danger. The most unsettling question was, how did they know that I knew? As long as they didn't know, my parents might not fall victim. That was one way to think about it, I guess. At least it was like that in my case. After I found out things started becoming odd. In other words, it meant the following. As long as my parents didn't know anything, nothing would happen to them. As long as my parents were here, this house would be a safe haven for them. I knew these were just assumptions based on conjecture on top of conjecture. Wanting this house to be a safe haven, that was the pinnacle of my weak-willed method of thinking. I had to concede that it was not completely safe. It was only safer than at the outside. I knew that I couldn't rely on my parents. No, I couldn't risk getting my parents involved. Then the only person who could be my ally would be Oishi-san, him and him alone. He was the only person who understood the situation I was in. He didn't care so much about my safety, but he was, without a doubt, passionate about solving this case. It was a bit frustrating. Oishi-san was basically the whole reason I was in this mess. Now to get out of it, I had to rely on him. Meaning it was all going according to his devices. was just my job to look appetizing while bobbing in the waves as a bait. Then, when the fish started gathering around, Oishi-san would pull up the big hole. It was slightly infuriating, but even I thought that was the best course of action. Then, what should I do? Patience was the first rule of fishing. Just keep waiting until the fish actually bites. But I wasn't simply bait. There were lots of ways for me to struggle before being devoured. When they struck, I needed to somehow dodge just enough and tag out to Oishi-san. No question, it was going to be hard. But the timing to bring out in Oishi-san in would be difficult. He was in the city, not Hinamizawa. So if I phoned him in my moment of need, it would take him about 30 minutes to reach me. So I needed to run away for those 30 minutes. For example, if we set up a rendezvous point for dire situations or something, I'd just have to hide out there until Oishi-san arrived.
よし、少し見えてきたぞ。
I was still being chased around in the dark by boogeymen, but now I knew which way to go. I would never have imagined this would be so reassuring. Oh yeah, it would probably be best if I had a concealed weapon for when things got rough. Typically that would call for a switchblade, but that wasn't too reassuring for combat. Also, since it was recognized as a weapon by the public, that wasn't good. Really, when the time comes, a long weapon like a bat would work in my favor. I remembered there was a metal bat at school. I could be confident with that when push came to shove. If I pretended I was practicing my swing, then it wouldn't be suspicious for me to always carry it around. I could go to school early tomorrow and secure it. Just possessing a weapon may be enough to deter them. Also, one more thing, insurance. It could be something like a note or a memo. I could write down everything that's happened as a sort of journal. In case I suddenly vanished, the journal would be left behind. With my journal in his possession, Oishi-san should be able to avenge my death. I left my parents engrossed in the conversation about work and went back to my room. I tore out a piece of paper from a notebook and made my way to my desk. Last time I wrote a journal was for summer homework in elementary school. Yeah, concealed. Bat, concealed. Choose one. Definitely the best course of action. In the off chance something bad happened, the police could use my diary as a lead. So I should only write down the facts. How should I start? I jotted down my thoughts as they came. I Keiichi am in fear for my life. It made me laugh nervously. It was a line that showed up often in detective stories. I never even dreamed that I would be in the type of situation where I'd write it myself. I do not know why they are after my life. Rena and the others were suspicious, but I had no proof. And that's why I couldn't write anything more. I laughed wryly at myself for writing such a passage draped in mystery. Would the police be able to get a hint from reading this enigmatic passage? I could only pray that they would. What I prayed for the most, though, was that this journal never needed to play its part. Here I laughed nervously. It was too simple, so I wrote down one more line I just thought of. The only thing I do know is that it has to do with Oyashiro-sama's curse. Was that too much? I probably shouldn't write more than that. If I wrote any more, then it would seem like I was just delusional. In order to appear to the reader that the person who had written this was sound of mind, I chose not to write anything else at that point. I just needed to add more as I learned more about the truth. I folded the paper and thought about a place to hide it. By hiding it somewhere obvious, there was the chance that they would uncover it instead. On the other hand, if it was in too obscure of a location, then there was the risk of nobody finding it at all. In the end, I decided to take the clock off my wall and stick my folded note on the back of it with scotch tape. After that, I put the clock back into its normal position. Yeah, it didn't look like anything was hidden behind it. Now I needed to set it up such that if anything happens to me, my parents could find it. I looked at it from countless different angles until I was satisfied and made my way downstairs. and my parents were still talking about work. It didn't look like it was going to end anytime soon, so I cut in.
話中ごめん。ちょっと聞いてもらっていいかな。
I'd never started off a conversation like that before, so my parents were both startled. They stopped talking and turned towards me.
どうしたのケイチ？
お願いがあるんだけど、聞いてほしいんだ。もしもだよ。
圭一、急ぎの話じゃなきゃ後にしなさい。お父さんとお母さんはちょっと今、急ぎの話をしてるんだ。
I didn't think their talk was more urgent than mine. In any case, I stated my request.
もしもだよ。俺が死んだらさ。
Both my parents' eyes went as wide as saucers.
死んだらさ、俺の部屋にある時計、あれを棺に入れてほしいんだ。
If they did that, then they'd probably find it. My memoir. Both my parents remained wide-eyed, not moving an inch. I couldn't
あ
blame
の
them.
時計、工作の授業で作ったお気に入りなんだ。頼むよ。
どうしたの？
That's quite the absurd request to make.
ケイチ、何かあったの？
Mom was finally able to ask me with a questioning gaze. Of course, this was a normal response when someone's son suddenly talked about a subject like this. I felt bad about making them worry, but right now I just wanted them to think about the clock in my room. With the awkward mood leaving the room in silence, I had decided to go back up to my room.
俺さ、明日は早くに学校に行きたいから、もうね、おやすみ。
Saying only that, I left the living room. I needed to get to school early tomorrow and secure that bat. I should make today the last day I went to school with Rena. As I climbed the stairs, I heard my mom call my name, but I pretended not to hear her. It wasn't something I could talk about with my parents. If I talked about it, it would only make things more dangerous. The fight that had begun was mine and mine alone. I couldn't rely on anybody. I wouldn't be killed. Not when I still knew nothing. Oh, is that already the end of the chapter? Not feeling so hot.
最近圭一くんの元気がないね。機嫌が悪いのかな。
I wonder if these tips will start getting creepy as well.
さーて、どうしたんだろうね。恋の病にでもかかってるんじゃないの？
みーちゃん、それ飛躍しすぎ。
Yuck, 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 yuck.
どう思う？
さあね。ケイちゃんひょっとしてかな？
わかんない。
あの日、ケイちゃんと車で話してたの。中年のでっぷりした男だったんでしょ？
うん、間違いない。
大石のやつ、ケイちゃんに何を吹き込んでるのかな？
真剣そうだったよ。圭一くんは顔面蒼白だった。
あのね、レナはよく知らないだろうけど、
Oh?
実はあいつ、お社様の使いなんだよ。
Oh?
何の話？
あいつが現れるとね、必ず鬼隠しが起こるの。本当だよ。
Intriguing.
あれ？そうなの？
おととし、リカちゃんのお母さんが受水したでしょ？その直前に大石が尋問してたんだよ。
そういえば、サトシくんが転校する前にもいたね。
転校？ レナはいいやつだよな。
で、今度はケイチくんの前に現れたんだ。じゃあ、ケイチくんも鬼隠しになっちゃう？
Onikakushi. An empty silence hung in the air, and then it was suddenly interrupted. An interesting theory, indeed. By loud laughter. Well, that's lovely. Let's take one look. No. This is such a tempting, like, just to go here and just creep ourselves out. It's going to be interesting. Let's creep ourselves out before continuing. No, 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 I'm too scared for that. Jesus Christ. Maybe now is a good time to end it. I'm getting really tired though, so... Even though it's only 2 AM. Tomorrow I'll start the stream earlier so that we'll be able to play StarCraft at the very least. Yeah, now's a good time to end it. Only 2 AM, yeah. It's only been a 4-hour long stream, so... Now's a good time to end it. So yeah.